miracle machine lately patented by Mr. Tesla, which will revolutionize the whole electric business of the world.
One of Tesla's closest friends was Robert Underwood Johnson, editor of the prestigious Century magazine. Johnson's wife was deeply in love with Tesla.
My dear Nicky, do leave aside the millionaires and Fifth Avenue for some simple pleasures. From one distinguished only by a great weakness, Katherine Johnson.
In fact, the world-famous inventor was also New York's most intriguing bachelor.
The fact that he never married, I think, had almost nothing to do with his interest in women. It appeared that he was always very interested and was attractive to women.
Many women sought his attention. The beautiful and wealthy socialite, Flora Dodge. And even the famous French actress, Sarah Bernhardt. But in spite of his charisma, Tesla was only interested in his inventions.
He had so many phobias that he couldn't have had close relationships with women. He didn't like most of the jewelry that they wore or the perfume, and he couldn't bear to touch hair. And and in fact, he didn't like to shake hands. And so these are all things that do tend to discourage intimate relationships.
The inventor even claimed that he destroyed his sexuality at the age of 40.
A certain French actress kept coming to me and made it impossible for me to concentrate. It's a pity, too, for sometimes I feel so lonely.
Throughout the 1890s, alongside his work on AC power technology, Tesla was also experimenting with high-frequency electricity. In 1873, James Clerk Maxwell in England had proven mathematically that light was electromagnetic radiation. Light was electricity, vibrating at an extremely high frequency. To explore this unknown world, Tesla invented a unique device, still known today as a Tesla coil.
The Tesla coil is an instrument that can step up voltages to high voltages at high frequencies. That essentially transmits a radio signal.
Tesla invited friends and potential investors to late-night demonstrations in his laboratory. In experiments, he would permit his guests to pass thousands of volts of electricity through their bodies to light a lamp or melt a wire in their hands. Mark Twain was always a willing subject.
Thunder is good. Thunder is impressive. But it is lightning that does the work.
Even today, it would be a little bit scary to go into Tesla's laboratory, and in those days when people didn't know anything about electricity, it must have been terrifying.
With high frequencies, Tesla developed some of the first neon and fluorescent illumination. He also took the first X-ray photographs. But these discoveries quickly paled one day in 1890 when a vacuum tube illuminated in his hand without any wire connection.
To me, it was the first evidence that I was transmitting energy through the air.
This was the beginning of Tesla's lifelong obsession, the wireless transmission of energy. In 1892, Tesla was invited to Europe to present the results of his high-frequency experiments. In London and Paris, he amazed scientists and engineers with lighting and electrical effects that looked more like magic than science. He also announced a remarkable new possibility.
I would say a few words on a thought which fills my mind and concerns the welfare of all. I mean the transmission of intelligence and even power without the use of wires. I am becoming more convinced daily of the practicality of this scheme.
The race for radio was about to begin. In 1888, the German physicist Heinrich Hertz had demonstrated that currents of high frequency emit electromagnetic waves, or radio waves, into space. But creating a practical means of wireless communication would require a quantum leap in imagination.
Hertz created the first radio transmitter and the first receiver. He had showed that you could create an electrical signal in one place and detect it in another place with nothing in between.
While in England, Tesla befriended Sir William Crookes, the discoverer of radiant matter. Crookes was a mystic and believed that human beings could communicate telepathically when they were attuned to high-frequency brainwaves. Tesla was skeptical, but one night in his bed he had a powerful and disturbing vision.
I saw a cloud carrying angelic figures, one of whom gradually assumed the features of my mother. In that instant, a certitude, which no words can express, came upon me that my mother had died. And that was true.
Tesla was convinced that he and his mother were tuned to the same frequency. His otherworldly experience would soon lead him to another revolutionary invention. On his return to New York in 1893, Tesla banished himself from social life and disappeared into his new laboratory on South Fifth Avenue. Following his uncanny intuition, he soon discovered that Tesla coils would transmit and receive powerful radio signals when they were tuned to resonate at the same frequency. Tuning is the key to all radio and television transmission.
In my laboratory, I could take in my hands a coil tuned to my body and collect 3/4 horsepower anywhere in the room without any tangible connection. Sometimes I would produce flames shooting out from my head and run a motor in my hands, or light 6 or 8 lamps.
By early 1895, Tesla was ready to transmit a signal 50 miles to West Point, New York. He could now produce 1 million volts with his new conical coil. But that year, on the Ides of March, disaster struck. Fire broke out in the building which housed Tesla's laboratory. Everything was lost.
Utterly disheartened and broken in spirit, Nikola Tesla, one of the world's greatest electricians, returned to his room in the Gerlach yesterday morning and took to his bed. He has not arisen since.
I was devastated. What could I say? The work of a lifetime lost in a fire that lasted only an hour or so.
The timing could not have been worse. In England, a young Italian experimenter named Guglielmo Marconi had been hard at work and created a device for wireless telegraphy. Concerned that Marconi would exploit his ideas, Tesla opened a new laboratory and rushed to complete his own system for wireless communication. This patent, filed by Tesla in September 1897, is the fundamental technology for radio. But it would be 50 years before Tesla got credit for his invention.
Various people in various different countries had the idea of exploiting this as a means of communication. But I think Tesla was the one with the real vision, in which you would broadcast signals on a definite carrier frequency, and then you would have a series of antennas that were sensitive to one frequency only, tuned to a certain frequency, and would detect just one of these signals and make an intelligible transmission. And once again, his vision describes the world that we live in.
I was so blue and discouraged in those days that I do not believe I could have borne up but for the regular treatments of electricity which I applied to myself. It puts into a tired body what it needs most, life force.
Following the destruction of his laboratory, Tesla developed a deeper interest in Eastern thought and spiritualism.
Mr. Tesla was charmed to hear about the Vedantic prana and Akash and the Kalpis, which he claims are the only theories modern science can entertain.
Inspired by the Hindu teacher Swami Vivekananda, Tesla began to look at the universe as a symphony of vibrations and waves.
We are whirling through endless space with an inconceivable speed. Everything is spinning. Everywhere there is energy. There must be some way of availing ourselves of this energy more completely.
In 1898, an unusual experiment took place in Tesla's laboratory. He attached a small mechanical oscillator to an iron pillar. Precisely timed pulses from the device made the entire building tremble.
Windows started crashing around the area, and he, being at the epicenter, didn't notice anything happening until some police came bursting into his laboratory. It was just at the moment where he'd picked up a sledgehammer and broken the oscillator. He just said to the policemen that how too bad that they had just missed an interesting experiment.
Tesla was, I would say, obsessed with frequency, the notion of resonance. The story where he takes the device and puts it on the girder in his office and, gets the frequency of the building and supposedly, it's an apocryphal story, I'm sure, but it gets right at the core that, hey, if I've got the right frequency, I can move the world. And indeed, he talks about the frequency of the earth, and that if he can do that, he can, almost literally split the earth in half.
Meanwhile, Marconi was doing more practical things and succeeded in transmitting a signal 5 miles on the Salisbury Plain in England. Not to be outdone, Tesla decided to introduce an entirely new invention. In a specially constructed pool, potential backers were amazed to see the inventor controlling the motions of a small mechanical boat with no wires attached to it. This was the world's first radio-controlled device. The machine even seemed to think. Someone threw out the question, what is the cube root of 64? And 4 flashes came back. The audience was so surprised, Tesla had to remove the lid to prove no one was inside.
Tesla developed his radio-controlled boat in 1898 and patented it and thought it was an armament for war. He rationalized this as a means of ending war. The military who looked at it thought it was too complicated and vulnerable.
Soon after the demonstration, Mark Twain wrote from Austria.
Dear Mr. Tesla, have you the Austrian and English patents on that destructive terror which you have been inventing, and thus make war henceforth impossible? If so, won't you set a price on them and commission me to sell them? Sincerely yours, Mark Twain.
But I have no desire to be remembered as the inventor of a purely destructive device. I prefer to be remembered as the inventor who abolished war. That will be my highest pride.
In the summer of 1899, Tesla moved to Colorado Springs, Colorado, to conduct a series of secret experiments. He told curious local reporters that he intended to send a wireless message from Pikes Peak to Paris